Flight attendant forces black mom to check baby bag. First-class passenger stands up in viral clip. The baby's wails slice through the tense silence of the cabin as the flight attendant towers over Maya Johnson, her finger stabbing the air between them. "Ma'am, that bag is clearly oversized. It needs to be checked, now." Maya clutches her squirming 6-month-old son closer to her chest, the diaper bag in question, the only lifeline to her son's needs for the next 4 hours, dangling precariously from her shoulder. Tears of frustration and humiliation burn behind her eyes as she glances around at the sea of faces, pretending not to watch the spectacle unfold. 3 other mothers with similar, even larger bags sit unbothered just rows away. None of them black, none of them being singled out. "But I need this for my baby," Maya pleads, her voice cracking as her son Elijah's cries intensify. "Everything he needs is in here, his medicine, his formula." The flight attendant, whose name tag reads Brenda, cuts her off with a dismissive wave. "Rules are rules, ma'am. You should have thought about that before boarding with an oversized bag." Brenda's voice carries throughout the cabin, making sure everyone hears the authority in her tone. A phone camera discreetly rises from 5 rows back. Maya feels her chest tighten, that familiar sensation of being treated differently, of having to fight battles others never face. She had triple-checked the airline's bag policy before flying, her first time traveling alone with Elijah to visit his grandmother. The bag meets every requirement. She knows it does. And then, from the plush seats of first class, a figure rises. A distinguished-looking man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to being heard slowly stands. The cabin stills as he steps into the aisle, his expression unreadable. No one expects what happens next. But to understand how we got here, how a routine flight from Chicago to Atlanta became the stage for a viral moment that would divide and unite a nation, we need to go back to where it all began, 12 hours earlier, when 3 separate lives were set on a collision course. The morning breaks with relentless rain battering against Maya Johnson's bedroom window. At 32, she never imagined she'd be doing this alone, raising Elijah, navigating life as a widow, forcing herself to keep moving forward when sometimes all she wants is to curl up and disappear. Today marks a milestone, Elijah's first flight to visit his grandmother in Atlanta. Maya's mother-in-law, Alina, hasn't seen her grandson since the funeral 4 months ago. Maya's alarm blares for the 3rd time. She hasn't truly slept, spending most of the night triple-checking the diaper bag, mentally rehearsing every step of the journey, envisioning every possible disaster. The pediatrician's warnings about flying with an infant with Elijah's particular sensitivities echo in her mind. Formula, diapers, changing pad, extra clothes, baby carrier, pacifiers, teething toys, baby Tylenol, prescription ear drops. Maya whispers the list like a prayer as she does a final inventory. She's packed with military precision, mindful of the airline's size restrictions. As a high school history teacher, Maya appreciates rules and structure. They make sense in a world that often doesn't. Her phone pings with a text from Alina. "Safe travels, dear. Can't wait to hold my grandbaby. Lionel would be so proud of you." Maya's breath catches at the mention of her late husband. A police officer killed in the line of duty, Lionel never got to see Elijah smile or hear his first gurgling laugh. The weight of raising their son to know a father he'll never meet presses down on her daily. "We're doing this, Lee," she whispers into the quiet room. "Just like we planned." Across town in a sleek high-rise condo overlooking Lake Michigan, Richard Whitman adjusts his bow tie in the mirror, scowling at the notification that his flight has been delayed by 30 minutes. At 63, the renowned cardiothoracic surgeon has perfected the art of efficiency. Delays are unacceptable, especially today when he's expected to give the keynote address at a medical conference in Atlanta. "Charlotte," he calls to his wife of 40 years, "did you pack my emergency kit?" He doesn't wait for an answer, already striding to his briefcase to check himself. Inside, neatly organized, are his medications, reading glasses, backup glasses, noise-canceling earbuds, sanitizing wipes, and the fountain pen his daughter gifted him last Christmas. Charlotte appears in the doorway, elegant even at this early hour. "It's all there, Richard, just as it's been the last 3 times you checked." There's gentle teasing in her voice, but Richard doesn't smile. His mind is already running through his presentation, mentally rehearsing the speech he's given dozens of times before. "The Uber will be here in 10 minutes, he says, glancing at his watch, an old Rolex that had belonged to his father, one of the first black cardiologists in Chicago. Richard's achievements have long since eclipsed his father's, but he wears the watch as a reminder of how far they've come and how hard one that journey was. Charlotte steps forward, straightening his already perfect tie. "Call me when you land." This time, Richard's expression softens. Always do. What Richard doesn't tell Charlotte is how much he's dreading this trip. The conference organizers have seated him next to Dr. Phillips for the gala dinner. The same colleague who'd suggested last year that Richard's appointment as department head had more to do with diversity initiatives than his 30 years of groundbreaking surgical techniques. Richard had smiled tightly and walked away then. He's been walking away from such moments his entire career. Meanwhile, at O'Hare Airport, Brenda Milligan rushes through employee security, coffee in hand, frowning at her watch. 23 years as a flight attendant, and she still occasionally cuts it close. At 58, Brenda has seen it all: medical emergencies, belligerent passengers, romantic proposals, and births. The skies have been her office through 3 marriages, 2 divorces, and raising a daughter who now has children of her own. "Morning, Brenda," calls Tanya, a younger flight attendant who will be working the Chicago to Atlanta route with her today. "Ready for another adventure?" Brenda forces a smile, though adventure is the last thing she wants today. Last night's phone call from her daughter still rings in her ears. "Mom, Jake's leaving me. He says he's in love with someone else." Brenda had stayed up until 2 a.m. talking her daughter through the initial shock, her own anger at her soon-to-be ex-son-in-law simmering beneath her comforting words. "Coffee first, then adventure," Brenda replies, taking a long sip from her travel mug. She follows Tanya to the briefing room where the flight crew is gathering. Captain Miller, a no-nonsense pilot with whom Brenda has flown dozens of times, runs through the flight details. "We're looking at some turbulence over Tennessee, folks, and we're running a full flight today, oversold actually. Might need volunteers to take the next one." Great, Brenda thinks. Oversold means cramped quarters, irritable passengers, and inevitable conflicts over the overhead bins. On a good day, she handles such challenges with practiced ease. Today, with her daughter's broken sobs still echoing in her mind, her patience feels paper-thin. As the crew disperses to prepare for boarding, Brenda checks her phone one last time. A text from her daughter. "Thanks for last night, Mom. Don't know what I'd do without you." Brenda straightens her uniform, tucks away her phone, and slides her professional mask into place. For the next 4 hours, other people's problems will take precedence over her own. It's the job she signed up for, the one that supported her family through thick and thin. What she doesn't know, what none of them know, is how their lives will intertwine in the next few hours, and how a single decision will set off a chain reaction that none of them could have anticipated. The airport teems with the particular chaos of a rainy Tuesday morning. Maya navigates the terminal with Elijah strapped to her chest, the carefully packed diaper bag hanging from her shoulder, and a small rolling suitcase trailing behind her. She's arrived 3 hours early, anticipating delays with security and giving herself ample time to feed Elijah before boarding. "ID and boarding pass, please," the TSA agent says, barely looking up. Maya juggles Elijah while retrieving the documents from her coat pocket. The agent glances at her ID, then at her face, then back at the ID, taking just a beat longer than seems necessary. Maya's used to this, the extra scrutiny, the double checks. She keeps her expression neutral. "First time flying with the little one?" the agent asks, his tone softening as he hands back her documents. "Yes," Maya admits, bouncing slightly as Elijah begins to fuss. "I've been preparing for weeks." The agent chuckles. "I've got 3 of my own, my advice. Feed during takeoff and landing. Helps with the ear pressure." He gestures her through with a sympathetic smile. Maya's shoulders relax slightly at this small kindness. She navigates the security line, struggling to remove her shoes while keeping Elijah calm. A middle-aged white woman behind her sighs loudly. "Some people shouldn't travel with infants," she mutters to her companion, just loud enough for Maya to hear. Maya pretends not to hear, though the words sting. She's become adept at this, letting slights roll off her back, choosing which battles to fight. As a black woman raising a black son in America, she's already teaching Elijah this skill, even at 6 months. The thought brings a fresh wave of grief for Lionel, who should be here, helping her navigate these moments. Once through security, Maya finds a quiet corner in a cafe to feed Elijah and check her boarding time. The flight is delayed by 30 minutes, a blessing in disguise, giving her more time to settle. As Elijah drinks his formula, his eyes locked on hers with complete trust, Maya feels a surge of determination. They can do this. They will do this. Across the terminal, Richard Whitman strides purposefully through the priority lane, TSA pre-check allowing him to keep his shoes on and laptop packed. The efficiency pleases him. He nods curtly at the agent who waves him through without a second glance, one of the privileges his first-class ticket and frequent flyer status afford him. His phone rings as he's collecting his briefcase from the conveyor belt. It's his daughter, Catherine. "Dad, did you get the photos I sent of Emma's recital?" Richard smiles despite himself. His 5-year-old granddaughter is the one person who can reliably soften his demeanor. I did. She's becoming quite the ballerina. She wanted to make sure Grandpa saw her before his important doctor trip. Her words, not mine. Richard chuckles, a rare sound that turns a few heads nearby. Tell her Grandpa is very proud and will bring her something special from Atlanta. After promising to call once he lands, Richard makes his way to the first-class lounge, where he settles into a leather armchair with a copy of the New England Journal of Medicine. The quiet efficiency of the lounge soothes him, a stark contrast to the noisy terminal outside. Richard's mind drifts to his presentation. Cardiovascular health disparities in minority communities, a 20-year analysis. The irony isn't lost on him, a black doctor presenting findings on how patients who look like him receive inferior care. Throughout his career, Richard has walked a careful line, advocating for change without becoming the angry black doctor. He's built his reputation on impeccable credentials and unflappable professionalism. A notification on his phone alerts him that boarding will begin soon. Richard gathers his belongings, mentally preparing to transition from the lounge's sanctuary to the controlled chaos of the boarding gate. Brenda and the other flight attendants prepare the cabin, checking safety equipment and stocking the galleys. Despite her years of experience, Brenda still performs each task with meticulous attention. Lives depend on her doing her job correctly. "Hey, did you hear we've got Dr. Whitman on board today?" Tanya whispers as they arrange blankets in the first-class cabin. "The heart surgeon. My mom had a valve replacement last year and he was her doctor. She said he's brilliant but intimidating as hell." Brenda nods, vaguely recognizing the name. "First class. Of course," Tanya replies with a grin. "Seat 3A, I already put extra sanitizing wipes at his seat. Apparently he's known for being particular." Brenda appreciates passengers who know what they want and are direct about it. It's the passive-aggressive ones, or worse, the entitled ones who pretend rules don't apply to them, that test her patience. And today, her patience is already wearing thin. Captain Miller's voice comes over the intercom. "Crew, prepare for boarding in 10 minutes. We're looking at a full flight with 182 passengers." Brenda takes a deep breath, centering herself. For the next few hours, she needs to be present, attentive, and professional. Her daughter's crisis will have to wait. As the first passengers begin to board, those needing special assistance and families with young children, Brenda positions herself near the entrance, offering practice smiles and directions to seats. She spots a young black woman with an infant strapped to her chest, struggling with a rolling suitcase and a shoulder bag. The baby is beginning to fuss. "Welcome aboard," Brenda says, her customer service voice firmly in place. "Can I help you with that suitcase?" Maya looks up with relief. "Thank you, yes." She surrenders the handle, grateful for one less thing to manage. Brenda glances at the diaper bag on Maya's shoulder. It seems large, possibly too large for the crowded overhead bins of the oversold flight. But the woman has her hands full with the baby, and Brenda decides not to add to her stress, at least not yet. There will be time to address it if necessary once they're on board. What Brenda doesn't realize is that this small decision, to wait rather than speak up immediately, will set the stage for the confrontation to come. The boarding process continues with the methodical rhythm typical of air travel. First-class passengers are welcomed aboard, including Richard Whitman, who nods politely but distantly at Brenda's greeting. He settles into seat 3A, immediately wiping down his armrests and tray table with the provided sanitizing wipes, plus a few extra from his own supply. Maya makes her way down the aisle to seat 23D, an aisle seat she'd specifically requested to accommodate frequent trips to the lavatory with Elijah. The plane is filling quickly, passengers stuffing oversized carry-ons into already crowded overhead bins and jostling for armrest territory. A middle-aged couple eyes Maya and Elijah with poorly disguised dismay as they realize they'll be sharing the row with an infant. Maya has anticipated this reaction and prepared a small bag of earplugs and candy with a note apologizing in advance for any disruption Elijah might cause. The gesture seems to surprise and slightly embarrass the couple. "First flight?" the woman asks, her tone softening as she accepts the peace offering. "His first," Maya confirms, adjusting Elijah in her lap. "I've been on plenty." "Well, he's adorable," the woman says, her initial reservation melting at Elijah's wide, curious eyes. "I'm Susan and this is my husband, Frank." This small connection eases some of Maya's tension. Perhaps this journey won't be as fraught as she feared. She secures her rolling suitcase in the overhead bin and keeps the diaper bag at her feet, easily accessible for Elijah's needs. The boarding process continues, the plane filling to capacity. The overhead bins close to Maya are soon full, forcing later arrivals to store their luggage in bins several rows away. Brenda and the other flight attendants assist, rearranging bags to maximize space, occasionally requiring passengers to check larger items. In first class, Richard Whitman observes this choreography with detached interest. He's been on hundreds of flights, witnessed the same human behaviors play out time and again. People become territorial about space on planes, he's noticed, whether it's bin space, armrests, or those precious few inches of legroom. His seatmate, a younger executive type glued to his phone, hasn't acknowledged Richard's presence beyond a cursory nod. Richard prefers it this way. He opens his tablet to review his presentation once more, losing himself in the familiar statistics and conclusions. Brenda moves efficiently through the cabin, assisting with bags, answering questions, and gently but firmly enforcing the rules. When she notices a young man trying to stuff a clearly oversized backpack into an overhead bin, she intervenes. "Sir, I'm afraid that's too large for the overhead compartment. We'll need to check it." The man argues briefly but relents when Brenda stands her ground. This is the part of her job she finds most challenging, being the enforcer, the rule keeper. Especially on days like today, when her empathy is already stretched thin by her daughter's situation. As the last passengers settle in, Brenda does a final walkthrough of the cabin, checking that all bags are properly stowed and seatbelts are fastened. When she passes row 23, she notices Maya's diaper bag partially extending into the aisle from under the seat. Under normal circumstances, Brenda might have let it go. The flight isn't full enough to require absolute adherence to every rule. But today, with her emotions raw and her tolerance low, she sees not a new mother doing her best but a potential safety hazard. "Excuse me, ma'am," Brenda says, stopping beside Maya's seat. "That bag needs to be completely under the seat in front of you." Maya looks up, startled. She adjusts the bag, pushing it further under the seat, though it clearly doesn't fit completely. "I'm sorry, is this better?" Brenda purses her lips, taking a closer look at the bag. It's definitely larger than the standard personal item allowance. "Actually, that bag appears to be oversized. We may need to check it." Maya's heart begins to race. "But this is my diaper bag. I need it for the flight. It has all my baby's essentials, formula, medicine, diapers." "You can remove the essentials and keep them with you," Brenda suggests, her tone making it clear this isn't really a suggestion. "But the bag itself needs to be compliant with our size restrictions." Maya glances around, noticing several other passengers with bags as large or larger than hers, tucked beside their feet or in their laps. None of them are being approached. "I checked your airline's policy before packing," she says, trying to keep her voice steady. "This bag meets the dimensions for a personal item." Brenda's expression hardens slightly. "Ma'am, I've been doing this job for over 20 years. I know when a bag is oversized." The confrontation is drawing attention now. Nearby passengers glance over, some with sympathy for Maya, others impatient for the issue to be resolved so the flight can depart. Susan and Frank, Maya's rowmates, exchange uncomfortable looks but say nothing. Maya feels her face growing hot with embarrassment and frustration. She's planned this trip meticulously, measured the bag herself, and now she's being singled out in front of a plane full of strangers. Elijah, sensing her distress, begins to whimper. "I really need this bag for my baby during the flight," Maya says, her voice catching slightly. "Please." Brenda remains unmoved. "Rules are rules, ma'am. You should have thought about that before boarding with an oversized bag." The baby's wails slice through the tense silence of the cabin as the flight attendant towers over Maya Johnson, her finger stabbing the air between them. "Ma'am, that bag is clearly oversized. It needs to be checked, now." Maya clutches her squirming 6-month-old son closer to her chest, the diaper bag in question, the only lifeline to her son's needs for the next 4 hours, dangling precariously from her shoulder. Tears of frustration and humiliation burn behind her eyes as she glances around at the sea of faces, pretending not to watch the spectacle unfold. 3 other mothers with similar, even larger bags sit unbothered just rows away. None of them black, none of them being singled out. "But I need this for my baby," Maya pleads, her voice cracking as her son Elijah's cries intensify. "Everything he needs is in here, his medicine, his formula." The flight attendant, whose name tag reads Brenda, cuts her off with a dismissive wave. "Rules are rules, ma'am. You should have thought about that before boarding with an oversized bag." Brenda's voice carries throughout the cabin, making sure everyone hears the authority in her tone. A phone camera discreetly rises from 5 rows back. Maya feels her chest tighten, that familiar sensation of being treated differently, of having to fight battles others never face. She had triple-checked the airline's bag policy before flying, her first time traveling alone with Elijah to visit his grandmother. The bag meets every requirement. She knows it does. And then from the plush seats of first class, a figure rises. Richard Whitman, distinguished in his tailored suit, steps into the aisle. The cabin stills, all eyes turning to him. He straightens his tie, a habitual gesture that gives him a moment to compose his thoughts, and then walks purposefully toward the confrontation. As he approaches, Brenda's expression shifts from stern authority to uncertainty. She recognizes him immediately, not just as a first-class passenger whose comfort and satisfaction is a priority, but as someone important, though she can't quite place him. "Is there a problem here?" Richard asks, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to being in charge of operating rooms where lives hang in the balance. Brenda straightens. "Sir, we're just enforcing the airline's baggage policy. This passenger's bag exceeds our size limits and needs to be checked." Richard glances at Maya, noting her distress and the wailing infant in her arms. Then he looks at the bag in question, his gaze clinical and assessing. "May I?" he asks Maya, gesturing to the bag. Too surprised to object, Maya nods. Richard picks up the diaper bag, examining it with the same careful attention he'd give to a surgical instrument. He places it on an empty seat, demonstrating that it fits within the space. "By my estimation," he says calmly, "this bag falls within the airline's personal item dimensions. I've been a platinum member with this airline for 15 years, and I'm quite familiar with the regulations." He turns to Brenda, his expression neutral but his eyes hard. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." Brenda hesitates, caught between enforcing her authority and challenging a first-class passenger. The moment stretches, the only sound Elijah's quieting cries. Passengers watch intently, several now openly recording the interaction on their phones. "Besides," Richard continues when Brenda doesn't immediately respond, "I can see at least 4 other passengers in this cabin with bags of similar or larger size." He gestures discreetly to specific examples. "I'm curious why this particular passenger and this particular bag have drawn your attention." The implication hangs in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Brenda's face flushes. "Sir, I assure you this has nothing to do with—" "I didn't suggest it had to do with anything," Richard interrupts smoothly. "I merely observed an inconsistency in enforcement." He turns to Maya. "I believe you mentioned your baby's medicine is in this bag." Maya nods, finding her voice. "Yes," his ear drops. He has sensitive ears, and the doctor prescribed them specifically for flying. Richard turns back to Brenda, one eyebrow raised in silent challenge. "Surely we can agree that separating a mother from her child's medicine creates an unnecessary medical risk. As a doctor, I would strongly advise against it." The dynamic has shifted completely. What began as a flight attendant enforcing rules on a passenger has transformed into a high-status professional questioning that authority. Other passengers are watching intently, and Brenda can feel the weight of their judgment. Captain Miller's voice breaks the tension, coming over the intercom. "Flight attendants, please prepare for departure." Brenda makes a quick calculation. Pursuing this further means delaying the flight, creating a formal incident, and potentially dealing with the social media fallout already brewing as passengers continue to record. "The bag can stay," she says finally, her tone clipped. "Please ensure it remains secure during takeoff and landing." She turns and walks briskly toward the front of the plane, her back rigid with suppressed emotion. Richard meets Maya's eyes. "Will you and your son be all right?" Maya nods, blinking back tears of relief and lingering humiliation. "Thank you," she whispers. "I don't know why she stops herself, unwilling to give voice to what they both understand. Richard's expression softens almost imperceptibly. "No thanks necessary. Enjoy your flight." He turns to walk back to his seat in first class. As Richard makes his way up the aisle, passengers regard him with new interest. Some nod in approval, others seem uncomfortable with his intervention. Susan leans over to Maya. "That was something. Are you okay, honey?" Maya nods, still processing what just happened. "Yes, thank you." She busies herself with settling Elijah, whose cries have subsided to occasional hiccups. The confrontation has left her shaken, bringing to the surface all the times she's had to justify her presence, defend her rights, or swallow her dignity. Back in his first-class seat, Richard stares out the window, his own emotions more turbulent than he cares to admit. He hadn't planned to get involved. In fact, he spent much of his career carefully avoiding such confrontations, focusing instead on excelling within the system. But something about the scene, the young mother's distress, the crying baby, the clear inconsistency in treatment, had triggered a response he couldn't suppress. As the plane begins to taxi, passengers still whisper about what they witnessed. Several are already posting about it on social media, their narratives varying based on their own perspectives and biases. By the time the plane reaches cruising altitude, the incident is beginning to gain traction online, though none of the participants yet realize it. In the galley, Brenda tries to compose herself, her hands shaking slightly as she prepares the beverage cart. Tanya approaches cautiously. "Everything okay?" Brenda forces a smile. "Fine, just a misunderstanding about a bag." But it wasn't just about a bag, and Brenda knows it. In her 23 years as a flight attendant, she's learned to make quick judgments, to assess potential problems before they escalate. Had she judged this situation differently because of her own stress? Because of unconscious biases she'd rather not acknowledge? Or was she simply doing her job, enforcing rules that passengers should respect regardless of their circumstances? These questions swirl in her mind as she begins the beverage service, her professional mask firmly back in place. But the encounter has shaken her, forcing uncomfortable self-reflection at a time when she's already emotionally vulnerable. As the flight settles into the routine of travel, the three central figures in the confrontation retreat into their own thoughts, unaware that their brief interaction will continue to reverberate long after they've reached their destination. The beverage service proceeds without further incident. Richard declines a drink, focused on his presentation. When Brenda reaches Maya's row, their interaction is stiffly polite, both women avoiding direct eye contact. Maya requests apple juice, which she uses to help Elijah take his ear medication. As the plane reaches cruising altitude, an uneasy calm settles over the cabin. Passengers return to their books, devices, and in-flight entertainment, though the earlier confrontation remains a topic of hushed conversation. The incident has created invisible connections between strangers who now share a story they'll retell from their various perspectives. In seat 17F, a social media influencer named Jessie Morgan reviews the video she captured on her phone. The 60-second clip shows the height of the confrontation, Brenda insisting the bag must be checked, Maya's emotional plea, and Richard's authoritative intervention. Jessie adds a provocative caption. Flight attendant forces black mom to check baby's medicine bag while white passengers keep larger bags. First-class passenger calls out the double standard. Flying while black discrimination airline scandal. She hesitates only briefly before posting it to her accounts. Within minutes, the likes and shares begin to accumulate. Oblivious to her growing online notoriety, Maya focuses on keeping Elijah comfortable. The eardrops seem to be working. He's settled into a peaceful sleep against her chest. Susan occasionally offers a sympathetic smile or a helpful hand when Maya needs to adjust her position. "You're doing great," Susan whispers at one point. "My kids are grown now, but I remember how challenging it was to travel with them when they were little. And without someone giving you grief about your diaper bag." Maya appreciates the solidarity, but is too drained to engage in extended conversation. The confrontation has left her emotionally exhausted, bringing to the surface the constant vigilance that accompanies her daily life. The need to be beyond reproach, to anticipate problems before they arise, to have ready explanations and defenses. She thinks of Lionel, how he would have handled the situation. As a police officer, he'd learned to navigate tense encounters with calm authority. "Choose your battles," he'd often told her. "Some aren't worth fighting, but the ones that are, stand your ground." She wonders if he would have considered this worth fighting, or if he would have surrendered the bag to avoid escalation. The thought brings fresh grief, another moment he should have been here for, another challenge she's facing alone. In first class, Richard reviews his presentation one final time before closing his tablet. The confrontation has left him unsettled, stirring memories of similar moments throughout his life and career. He remembers being the only black student in his medical school class, the careful way he'd cultivated a persona of unflappable professionalism to counter the subtle questioning of his qualifications. He thinks of his father, who had faced far more overt discrimination as one of Chicago's first black cardiologists, who had taught him to choose his moments of resistance carefully. "You can't fight every battle," his father had told him, "but never let anyone mistake your restraint for acceptance." Had he broken his own rules by intervening? Perhaps. But watching that young mother being singled out while others with similar infractions went unchallenged had struck a chord too resonant to ignore. Some part of him recognizes that he'd used his privilege, his status as a first-class passenger, his professional authority, his carefully cultivated respectability, as a shield for someone who lacked those protections. His seatmate, who has observed the entire incident with quiet interest, finally speaks. "That was well handled back there." Richard offers a non-committal not inviting further conversation, but his seatmate continues, lowering his voice. "Though between us, the flight attendant was just doing her job. Some people think the rules don't apply to them because they have kids." Richard turns, regarding the man with a level gaze. "Is that what you saw, someone thinking rules don't apply to them?" His tone is mild, but there's an edge to it. The man shifts uncomfortably. "Well, I'm just saying, I saw selective enforcement," Richard interrupts quietly. "And in my experience, that's rarely about the rules themselves." He turns back to the window, effectively ending the conversation. In the galley, Brenda completes her inventory for the beverage service, her movements mechanical as her mind races. 23 years of flying, and she's never had an incident like this. She's always prided herself on her professionalism, on treating all passengers with equal respect. Was the first-class passenger right? Had she singled out the young mother because of unconscious bias? She wants to dismiss the suggestion outright. After all, she has a black son-in-law, had a black son-in-law. She corrects herself, thinking of her daughter's phone call, and has never considered herself prejudiced in any way. But the man's pointed comments about other bags of similar size have planted a seed of doubt. Tanya approaches, interrupting Brenda's thoughts. "Everything okay? You seem off today." Brenda considers brushing off the concern but finds herself craving a sympathetic ear. "My daughter called last night. Her husband's leaving her for someone else." Tanya's expression softens with genuine sympathy. "Oh, Brenda, I'm so sorry. That's awful. 3 years of marriage and he walks out like it meant nothing." Brenda's voice catches. "I was up all night with her, and now this." She gestures vaguely toward the cabin, indicating the earlier confrontation. "Don't beat yourself up about the bag thing," Tanya says, misinterpreting Brenda's distress. "You were just enforcing the rules." But were the rules the real issue? Brenda isn't so sure anymore. She's always believed herself to be fair-minded, but what if stress and exhaustion had allowed unconscious biases to surface? The thought is deeply uncomfortable. As the flight continues, the video of the confrontation gains momentum online. What began as a post from a relatively minor influencer is picked up by larger accounts focused on social justice issues and racial discrimination. Context-free snippets appear on various platforms, each with slightly different framing. Black mother with baby harassed over bag size, while white passengers ignored racism. Flight attendant tries to separate mother from baby's medicine. Doctor intervenes medical discrimination. Hero, first-class passenger, stands up for young mom targeted by power-tripping flight attendant stand-up. By the time the plane begins its descent into Atlanta, the incident has been viewed tens of thousands of times across multiple platforms. News organizations have begun reaching out to the airline for comment. None of this is yet known to the 3 people at the center of the storm. As the captain announces their approach to Atlanta, Maya gently wakes Elijah, who has slept for most of the flight. She prepares another bottle to help with the pressure change during descent. Susan offers to hold the bottle while Maya adjusts Elijah's position. "You've got a good little traveler there," Susan says, smiling at the drowsy baby. Most scream the whole way. "The eardrops helped," Maya replies, "and I'm lucky he's generally pretty easygoing." She hesitates, then adds, "Thank you for being kind. It means a lot, especially after." Susan nods in understanding. "What happened wasn't right. I should have spoken up too." The admission surprises Maya. So often after such incidents, people pretend not to have noticed or try to explain away what happened. Susan's acknowledgement feels like a small balm on the still raw wound of the confrontation. In first class, Richard prepares for landing, methodically stowing his tablet and adjusting his seat. His mind has shifted back to the medical conference, mentally rehearsing key points of his presentation. Yet he finds himself wondering about the young mother and her baby. Will they face similar treatment at their destination? Will there be someone to stand up for them if they do? He's pulled from these thoughts by an announcement from the captain. "Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Brenda moves efficiently through the cabin, checking that seats are upright and tray tables stowed. When she reaches row 23, she pauses, meeting Maya's eyes briefly. There's a moment of recognition between them, not reconciliation exactly, but acknowledgement. Brenda opens her mouth as if to say something, then seems to think better of it, continuing her checks without comment. As the plane touches down in Atlanta, passengers reach for their phones, reconnecting to the world they've been separated from for the past few hours. Notification sounds ping throughout the cabin as messages and alerts flood in. Richard checks his email, seeing several urgent messages from the conference organizers. He assumes they relate to his presentation, perhaps a scheduling change. He'll address them once he's off the plane. Maya texts Alina, "Just landed, all good. Elijah was a champ." She doesn't mention the confrontation. No need to worry her mother-in-law before they've even arrived. Brenda receives a message from her supervisor. "Call me as soon as you land. Incident on your flight going viral." Her stomach drops as she reads these words. Viral. She quickly opens the linked video and watches in horror as the confrontation plays out from a passenger's perspective. The caption reads, "Flight attendant forces black mom to check baby bag while ignoring white passengers with oversized bags." First-class hero intervenes. Racism, discrimination. The comments below are overwhelmingly negative, many calling for Brenda to be fired. Some have already identified her by name from her visible name tag in the video. The airline's social media accounts are being flooded with angry messages. As passengers prepare to disembark, none are aware that what transpired on the flight has already escaped the confines of the aircraft, taking on a life of its own in the digital world. The brief confrontation has been reduced to a minute-long clip, stripped of context and nuance, viewed and judged by thousands who weren't present. By the time the seatbelt sign dings off, the incident that began as a dispute over a diaper bag has transformed into something far larger, a Rorschach test for America's ongoing struggles with race, power, and accountability. The passengers rise in the familiar choreography of deplaning, retrieving bags from overhead bins, checking seats for forgotten items, forming the impatient queue in the aisle. Maya waits her turn, Elijah drowsy against her shoulder, the contested diaper bag now secured without comment. As Richard passes her row on his way out, their eyes meet briefly. There's a moment of connection, recognition of a shared experience that transcends their brief interaction. Richard nods slightly, a gesture so subtle that only Maya notices. She returns the nod, a silent acknowledgement of gratitude and something more, respect between two people who understand certain truths without needing to voice them. Brenda stands near the exit, offering the customary, "Thank you for flying with us" to departing passengers. Her smile feels frozen, her mind racing with the implications of the viral video. When Richard approaches, she meets his gaze directly, professional mask firmly in place. "Thank you for flying with us, Dr. Whitman," she says, using his title deliberately, a small reminder that she knows who he is. Richard pauses, studying her face. "Thank you for getting us here safely," he replies, his tone neutral. He could say more about the confrontation, about the video he's now seen on his phone, but he chooses not to. This isn't the place, and public humiliation serves no constructive purpose. As Maya approaches the exit with Elijah, Brenda's professional smile falters slightly. "I hope your little one had a good flight," she says, the words sounding hollow even to her own ears. Maya hesitates, then responds with simple dignity. "He did, thank you." She continues past Brenda, head held high, joining the stream of passengers heading toward baggage claim. In the jet bridge, Maya spots Richard walking ahead, his posture straight, his pace purposeful. She quickens her steps to catch up to him. "Dr. Whitman," he turns, surprised to hear his name. "I just wanted to thank you properly," Maya says, "for what you did back there. Not everyone would have spoken up." Richard's expression softens slightly. "Ms. Johnson, Maya Johnson, and this is Elijah." "Ms. Johnson," Richard nods. "I did what anyone should have done. But not what everyone would do," Maya replies, "and that makes all the difference." She shifts Elijah to her other shoulder. "I'm a history teacher. I tell my students that change happens when people choose to act in moments that matter. Today, you gave me an example I can share with them." Richard seems momentarily at a loss for words, a rare occurrence for someone accustomed to commanding operating rooms and lecture halls. "I'm glad I could help," he says finally. "Safe travels to you and Elijah." They part ways at the terminal, heading in different directions, Richard to a waiting car service, Maya to meet her mother-in-law at baggage claim. Neither realizes yet how completely their lives have been altered by their brief intersection, or how widely their story is spreading. By the time Maya reaches baggage claim, where a leaner waits with anxious excitement to meet her grandson, the video has been viewed over 100,000 times. News organizations have begun reaching out to the airline for comment, and social media sleuths are working to identify all three principal figures in the footage. Eleanor, an elegant woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and Lionel's warm brown eyes, embraces Maya tightly before turning her full attention to Elijah. "There's my beautiful boy," she coos, taking him gently from Maya's arms. "Was he good on the flight?" "Perfect," Maya says, choosing not to burden Eleanor with the confrontation. "Slept most of the way." As they wait for Maya's checked luggage, Eleanor's phone pings with a news alert. She glances at it, then does a double take. "Maya," she says slowly, "is this you?" She turns the phone screen toward Maya, who sees a still image from the viral video, her own face clearly visible as she clutches Elijah protectively. The headline reads, "Discrimination at 30,000 feet. Video shows black mother targeted by flight attendant." Maya's stomach drops. "How did they get this so fast? It says it's all over social media," Eleanor replies, scrolling through the article. "People are calling the man who stood up for you a hero." Looks up at Maya, her expression a mix of concern and pride. "Were you going to tell me about this?" Maya sighs, suddenly exhausted. "Eventually, I just wanted to get here first to process it." She watches as Elijah snuggles contentedly against his grandmother's shoulder, blissfully unaware of his inadvertent role in what's rapidly becoming a national conversation. "I never wanted to be a hashtag Eleanor." Eleanor squeezes her hand. "I know, sweetheart, but maybe this needed to happen. Maybe people need to see what we deal with every day." Her voice drops. "Lionel would be proud of how you handled yourself." The mention of Lionel brings unexpected tears to Maya's eyes. She blinks them away quickly. Let's get the bags and get out of here. I've had enough public attention for one day. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the airport, Richard sits in an airline lounge, frowning at his phone. The conference organizer's urgent messages weren't about his presentation after all, but about the viral video in which he features prominently. The medical conference is now requesting that he give a brief statement to the press about the incident, seeing an opportunity to highlight their commitment to addressing healthcare disparities. Richard's first instinct is to decline. He's always kept his head down, focused on his work rather than activism. Getting involved in a social media controversy goes against every instinct for self-preservation he's developed throughout his career. Yet as he watches the video again, he sees what others see: a respected doctor using his position to intervene when a young mother was being treated unfairly. The comments call him a hero, an ally, an example of how privilege should be used to support those with less power. Richard thinks about what Maya said about change happening when people choose to act in moments that matter. Perhaps this is another such moment, not just the intervention on the plane, but how he responds to the attention it has generated. After careful consideration, he calls the conference organizer back. "I'll make a brief statement," he says, "but on my terms and only if Ms. Johnson agrees to be involved." He's not sure why he adds this condition, except that it feels wrong to speak about an incident that centers on her experience without her consent. As he ends the call, a notification appears on his phone, a text from his wife, Charlotte. "Richard, you're trending on Twitter. Call me." The third figure in this unfolding drama, Brenda, sits in a small office at the Atlanta airport, facing her supervisor across a desk cluttered with paperwork. The supervisor, a harried-looking woman named Patricia, plays the viral video on her tablet one more time before looking up at Brenda. "This doesn't look good," Patricia says, her tone measured but grave. "Social media is calling for your termination. The airline's stock price took a hit this afternoon, and we've got news outlets requesting statements." She sighs. "I need your side of the story, Brenda." Brenda's hands twist in her lap. The hours since landing have been a blur of panicked phone calls and mounting dread. Her daughter has already texted her about the video, asking if she's okay, adding another layer of emotion to an already overwhelming situation. "I was enforcing the bag policy," Brenda begins, but even to her own ears, the explanation sounds thin. She takes a deep breath and tries again. "I noticed her bag extending into the aisle, which is a safety hazard. When I looked closer, it seemed oversized." Patricia raises an eyebrow. "The video shows several other passengers with bags of similar size. Why focus on Ms. Johnson?" The question hangs in the air between them. Brenda wants to defend herself, to explain that she wasn't singling anyone out, that she was just doing her job. But the evidence on the video is difficult to dismiss. Had she scrutinized Maya's bag more closely because of unconscious bias, because she was already emotionally raw from her daughter's situation? Or was it truly just about following protocol? "I don't know," Brenda admits finally, her voice small. "I was stressed. My daughter called the night before with some bad news. I wasn't sleeping well." She trails off, realizing how inadequate these explanations sound in the face of what the video suggests. Patricia's expression softens slightly. "Look, Brenda, you've been with us for over 2 decades. Your record is spotless, but this is serious." She gestures to the tablet. "The public has already decided what they saw, and the airline needs to respond accordingly." "Am I being fired?" Brenda asks directly, her heart pounding. "You're being placed on administrative leave while we conduct a full investigation," Patricia replies. "I'm going to be honest with you, this could go either way. It depends partly on whether Ms. Johnson decides to file a formal complaint and how the public reacts to our response." Brenda nods numbly. 23 years of service, potentially ended by a moment of poor judgment captured on video and broadcast to the world. She thinks of her mortgage, her daughter who might need financial support during her divorce, her retirement still years away. The weight of it all threatens to crush her. "What should I do?" she asks, hating the desperation in her voice. Patricia regards her thoughtfully. "If I were you, I'd consider reaching out to Ms. Johnson, not to pressure her, but to apologize, genuinely." She pauses, and Brenda, "I'd take some time to reflect on why this happened, really reflect." As Brenda leaves the office, her phone buzzes with a notification. It's a message from her son-in-law, her soon-to-be ex-son-in-law, who has apparently seen the video. "Always knew you had a problem with black people. Guess now everyone else knows, too." The text feels like a physical blow. Jake, who she'd welcomed into her family, who she'd defended when others questioned the interracial relationship, now using this moment of vulnerability to twist the knife. Brenda sinks onto a bench, overwhelmed by how quickly her life seems to be unraveling. By evening, The story has exploded across national media. The airline has issued a carefully worded statement. We are aware of the video circulating on social media and take these allegations very seriously. The employee involved has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Southwest Airlines is committed to providing a welcoming environment for all passengers and does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. Maya arrives at Alina's suburban Atlanta home, where journalists have already discovered her identity and are gathering outside. Alina pulls the blinds closed, turning to Maya with a determined expression. We don't have to talk to them if you don't want to. Maya watches Elijah playing contentedly on a blanket, surrounded by toys Alina had carefully preserved from Lionel's childhood. What would Lionel say? Alina considers this. He'd say that sometimes staying quiet protects your peace and sometimes speaking up protects your dignity. She sits beside Maya on the couch. The question is, which do you need more right now? Maya's phone has been buzzing constantly with notifications. Messages from colleagues and friends who have seen the video, reporters requesting interviews, and surprisingly, an email from Richard Whitman. She opens it, curious. Ms. Johnson, it reads, I hope this message finds you well after today's unfortunate incident. The medical conference I'm attending has requested that I make a statement about what occurred on our flight. I've agreed, but only if you consent and wish to be involved as well. This is your story more than mine, and I won't speak about it publicly without your approval. Please let me know your thoughts. Respectfully, Richard Whitman, M.D. Maya reads the email twice, touched by his deference to her wishes. It's a small thing, perhaps, but significant, a recognition that her voice matters in this narrative that has somehow become larger than all of them. She looks up at Alina. I think I need to speak up, she says finally. Not because I want attention, but because staying silent feels like accepting what happened. She gestures to Elijah. How can I teach him to stand up for himself if I don't show him how? Alina nods, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and concern. Then we'll face this together. She picks up her grandson, holding him close. Just like we do everything else. As night falls, the three individuals at the center of the viral moment retreat into private spaces of reflection. None of them chose this spotlight, yet each must now decide how to navigate it, how to respond to a world that has already formed judgments based on a 60-second video clip of one of their worst moments. Richard sits in his hotel room, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. The medical conference gala dinner proceeds without him. He'd begged off, claiming fatigue from travel. In truth, he needs this time alone to think, to decide who he wants to be in this unexpected chapter of his life. For decades, he's carefully maintained a certain image, the consummate professional above the fray of politics or controversy. Yet in that moment on the plane, he'd abandoned caution, following an instinct deeper than professional calculation. Now he must decide whether to retreat to the safety of his carefully constructed persona or to step fully into this new role that's been thrust upon him. His phone chimes with a text from Maya. I've read your email. I'd like to speak with you about making a joint statement. Can we meet tomorrow? The decision, it seems, has been made for him. Across town, Brenda sits at her kitchen table, staring at a blank email draft addressed to Maya Johnson. The airline's HR department had strongly encouraged her to write an apology, suggesting it might help mitigate the public relations disaster. But every attempt at composing the message feels hollow, performative. I'm sorry you felt discriminated against, she'd written in one draft, only to delete it immediately, recognizing the deflection in those words. I apologize for any misunderstanding, she'd tried next, but that too felt inadequate. The truth is more complicated and uncomfortable. She isn't entirely sure why she'd singled out Maya's bag. Was it unconscious bias, displaced frustration from her personal problems? A genuine belief that she was just doing her job? All of these? None of these. Brenda closes her laptop without sending anything. An insincere apology would only make things worse. Before she can apologize meaningfully, she needs to confront her own role in what happened to understand it honestly. And that requires more reflection than a hastily written email allows. Her phone rings, her daughter calling for their nightly check-in. Brenda hesitates before answering. What can she possibly say? That while her daughter's marriage was falling apart, she'd created her own crisis by potentially discriminating against a young mother. That her son-in-law's parting shot might have more truth to it than she wants to admit. She answers anyway. Hi, sweetie. Mom, her daughter's voice is warm with concern. I saw the video. Are you okay? Brenda hadn't expected this, compassion rather than judgment. Tears spring to her eyes. I don't know, she answers honestly. I really don't know. In Alina's guest bedroom, Maya sits on the edge of the bed, scrolling through social media reactions to the video. Her name is now a hashtag, her face captured in screenshots and shared thousands of times. Strangers debate what happened, what should have happened, what it all means in the context of America's ongoing struggle with racial justice. Some comments make her wince. She was probably being loud and difficult before the video started. Why do these people always play the race card? Others bring unexpected tears. As a black mother, I've been here too many times. Thank you for standing your ground for yourself and your baby. Maya closes the app, setting her phone aside. She thinks about her students, many of whom have likely seen the video by now. What lesson will they take from this? That standing up for yourself matters. That discrimination remains a daily reality. That social media can amplify a moment of injustice into a national conversation. All of these, perhaps. But Maya hopes they'll also see something else, that in a moment of conflict, a stranger chose to stand up, to use his privilege to intervene when he could have remained comfortably silent. That change happens when people choose to act in moments that matter. She glances at the crib where Elijah sleeps peacefully, unaware of the storm swirling around them. "We're going to be okay," she whispers to him. "Better than okay." Tomorrow, she'll meet with Richard Whitman to discuss their joint statement. She'll face the cameras with dignity and speak her truth. She'll use this unexpected platform to say something meaningful, not just about what happened on that flight, but about the countless similar moments that go uncaptured and unaddressed. But tonight, in this quiet room, she allows herself to feel the full weight of the day. The fear, the humiliation, the anger, and eventually the strange sense of purpose that has emerged from it all. Maya Johnson never wanted to be a hashtag, but now that she is one, she intends to make it count. As Wednesday dawns in Atlanta, the viral video continues its digital journey, the view count now in the millions. Morning news shows discuss the incident, social commentators offer analysis, and the airline's PR team works overtime to contain the damage. What began as a dispute over a diaper bag has evolved into a national conversation about race, privilege, and accountability. By mid-morning, Maya and Alina have made their way through the small crowd of reporters outside, heading to a nearby hotel where Maya has arranged to meet Richard before their joint press statement. Elijah remains at home with a trusted friend of Alina's, shielded from the media attention. The hotel's management has provided a private conference room for the meeting. When Maya enters, Richard is already there, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit, reviewing notes at the table. He rises when she enters, extending his hand. "Ms. Johnson, thank you for agreeing to meet." Maya shakes his hand, noting the strength in his grip, the direct way he meets her eyes. "Thank you for reaching out," she replies, "and please call me Maya." They sit across from each other, an unexpected alliance formed through circumstance. For a moment, neither speaks, each assessing the other in the light of day, away from the charged atmosphere of the airplane cabin. "Never expected any of this," Richard says finally, gesturing vaguely to indicate the media frenzy. "I've spent most of my career avoiding this kind of attention." Maya nods in understanding. "Me too. I'm a history teacher. I talk about people who make history. I don't expect to be in the news myself." She pauses, choosing her next words carefully. "Why did you stand up for me on the plane? You could have stayed in your seat like everyone else." Richard seems surprised by the direct question. He considers it thoughtfully. "I saw something happening that I knew was wrong, something I've experienced myself, though in different contexts." He straightens a cufflink, a small gesture that gives him a moment to find the right words. "There comes a point in your life when staying silent feels like complicity. Even when speaking up comes with risks," Maya asks. "Especially then," Richard replies. His phone buzzes with a notification, which he glances at before continuing. The conference organizers have set up a press conference for noon. They're presenting it as a discussion on bias in everyday interactions with me as their expert speaker. He sounds faintly amused by the framing. "They've built a whole panel around it. Convenient timing for them," Maya observes dryly. "Indeed." Richard's expression turns serious. "I've made it clear that I won't participate unless you're included as an equal voice. This is your experience we're discussing, after all." Maya appreciates this recognition. Too often, she's felt like an object of discussion rather than a participant in conversations about race and discrimination. "Thank you for that. I'd like to be involved." She takes a deep breath. "Have you heard anything about the flight attendant?" "Brenda," Richard nods. "She's been placed on administrative leave while the airline investigates. Beyond that, I don't know." Maya's feelings about Brenda are complicated. On one hand, the humiliation of being singled out still stings. On the other, she has no desire to see another woman's career destroyed. "I don't want this to be just about punishing her," Maya says. "That doesn't solve the larger problem." "What do you want it to be about?" Richard asks, genuinely curious. Maya considers the question. "Accountability, yes, but also understanding, growth." She meets his gaze directly. "I teach my students that history isn't just about what happened, but about how we respond to it, how we learn from it." A smile touches Richard's lips, the first real smile Maya has seen from him. You must be an excellent teacher. I try to be, she replies simply. They spend the next hour preparing for the press conference, discussing what points they want to emphasize, what narratives they want to challenge. Despite their different backgrounds and experiences, they find common ground in their desire to transform this incident into something constructive rather than merely punitive. As they're about to leave for the press conference, Maya receives an email notification. It's from Brenda, she says, surprised. Richard raises an eyebrow. The flight attendant? Maya nods, opening the message. She reads it silently, her expression giving nothing away. Dear Ms. Johnson, the email begins. I've started and deleted this message dozens of times, trying to find the right words. There are probably no right words, but I owe you an honest apology. What happened on that flight was wrong. I treated you differently than other passengers, and whether that was due to unconscious bias, the stress I was under from personal issues, or some combination of factors, the impact on you was the same. You were singled out, embarrassed, and made to feel unwelcome when you were simply trying to travel with your child. I've spent the past day reflecting on my actions and asking myself hard questions about why I approached you and not others with similar bags. The answers are uncomfortable but necessary for me to confront. I don't expect forgiveness, nor am I asking you to speak up on my behalf regarding my employment. Those consequences are mine to bear. I simply wanted you to know that I am truly sorry for how I treated you and your son, and I am committed to learning from this experience. Respectfully, Brenda Milligan. Maya looks up from her phone, finding Richard watching her with interest. She apologized, Maya says simply. A real apology, not a sorry you felt that way, non-apology. That's unexpected, Richard admits. Will you respond? Maya considers this. Yes, but not right now. I need to think about what I want to say. She puts her phone away. We should head to the press conference. The hotel ballroom has been transformed for the medical conference's hastily arranged panel discussion. Cameras from several news outlets are positioned at the back of the room. The conference organizers have placed name cards on the table. Richard Whitman, MD, prominently in the center, with Maya Johnson added as an apparent afterthought. Without comment, Richard switches the cards, placing Maya's in the center position. It's a small gesture, but one that doesn't go unnoticed by the conference organizers or the journalists present. The moderator, a polished woman in her 50s, introduces the panel. Today, we have a unique opportunity to discuss an incident that has captured national attention and raises important questions about bias in everyday interactions. We're honored to have with us Dr. Richard Whitman, our keynote speaker and a distinguished cardiothoracic surgeon, and Ms. Maya Johnson, who was directly involved in the incident in question. The cameras roll as Richard and Maya take turns describing what happened on the flight. They speak with careful precision, neither sensationalizing nor minimizing the incident. When asked directly about whether she believes she experienced racial discrimination, Maya answers thoughtfully. What I experienced was being singled out when others in similar situations were not. That's a pattern many people of color recognize from our daily lives. She pauses. I can't speak to what was in the flight attendant's heart or mind. I can only speak to the impact of her actions, which left me feeling humiliated and othered in front of a plane full of strangers. A reporter directs a question to Richard. Dr. Whitman, as someone with your status, did you feel obligated to intervene? Richard considers his response carefully. I felt compelled to speak up, not because of my professional status, but because I recognized an injustice occurring. Too often we witness such moments and remain silent, telling ourselves it's not our place to get involved. He glances at Maya. But as Ms. Johnson teaches her history students, change happens when people choose to act in moments that matter. The press conference continues for nearly an hour, the questions ranging from the specific details of the incident to broader discussions of implicit bias and systemic discrimination. Throughout, Maya and Richard maintain a united front, neither painting Brenda as a villain nor diminishing the seriousness of what occurred. As the event concludes, the moderator asks if either has a final statement. Maya speaks first. I never wanted to become the center of a viral moment or a hashtag, she says. I was simply traveling with my son to visit his grandmother. But now that this has happened, I hope we can use it as an opportunity for reflection and growth, not just for the individuals involved, but for all of us who navigate a world where such incidents occur daily, whether cameras are rolling or not. Richard nods in agreement before adding his own thoughts. Throughout my career, I've often chosen to stay silent in the face of subtler forms of discrimination, focusing instead on excellence as its own form of response. Yesterday, something compelled me to speak up instead. He pauses. Perhaps it's time for all of us with privilege or authority to reconsider when silence serves progress and when it impedes it. As they leave the podium, flashbulbs popping and reporters calling out additional questions, Maya feels a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She never sought this platform, yet now that she has it, she's determined to use it meaningfully. Back at the hotel after the cameras have gone and the reporters have filed their stories, Maya and Richard share a quiet moment before parting ways. "You handled that beautifully," Richard tells her. "Your students are fortunate to have such an articulate teacher." Maya smiles. "Thank you for everything, not just for standing up on the plane, but for making sure my voice was heard today." Richard nods, understanding the significance of this acknowledgement. "What will you do now about Brenda's email, I mean?" Maya has been pondering this question throughout the press conference. "I think I'll meet with her," she says finally. "Not for the cameras or for social media, but because it feels like the right next step." "That shows remarkable grace," Richard observes. Maya shakes her head slightly. "Not grace, purpose. If this is going to be more than just another viral outrage that fades when the next one comes along, then something constructive needs to emerge from it." They exchange contact information before parting, both sensing that their unexpected connection might extend beyond this single incident. As Maya watches Richard walk away, she reflects on how strange life can be, how a moment of conflict brought her into the orbit of someone she would likely never have met otherwise, creating an alliance neither of them anticipated. That evening, Maya composes her response to Brenda's email, inviting her to meet privately the following day. She's not sure what will come of such a meeting, but she feels compelled to try, to see if understanding might emerge from confrontation, if growth might arise from discomfort. As she sends the email, Maya thinks about Elijah, about the world he's growing into. She hopes that by the time he's old enough to understand what happened on that flight, they'll be able to point to it not just as an example of the discrimination that persists, but as a moment that led to meaningful change, however small, however personal. Maya doesn't expect to change the world with one conversation, but perhaps changing one interaction, one relationship, one perspective at a time is how the larger change begins. The next morning, at a quiet cafe chosen for its privacy, Maya arrives early to prepare herself for the meeting with Brenda. She's left Elijah with Alina again, wanting to focus entirely on this conversation without distractions. She chooses a table in the back corner, ordering herbal tea to calm her unexpectedly jittery nerves. Maya has faced countless challenging situations, from the daily microaggressions of being a black woman in America to the devastating loss of her husband. Yet this meeting feels uniquely daunting. What do you say to someone who humiliated you in public, whose actions thrust you into an unwanted spotlight, but who has also reached out with what seems to be genuine remorse? Brenda arrives precisely on time, looking smaller somehow than she did in her airline uniform. She wears simple civilian clothes, dark jeans, and a blue cardigan, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail rather than the sleek bun Maya remembers from the flight. She scans the cafe, spots Maya, and approaches with visible apprehension. "Ms. Johnson," she says, her voice quieter than Maya remembers. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Maya gestures to the chair across from her. "Please sit down, and it's Maya." Brenda settles into the chair, her hands folded tightly on the table. "I want to say again how sorry I am for what happened on the flight, seeing it play out on video, hearing how it affected you." She shakes her head. "I'm ashamed of how I acted." Maya studies her face, noting the dark circles under Brenda's eyes, the tightness around her mouth. The viral moment has clearly taken its toll on her as well. "Your email mentioned you were under stress from personal issues," Maya says, not unkindly. "That doesn't excuse what happened, but it might help me understand it." Brenda seems surprised by this opening, this invitation to context rather than immediate judgment. "My daughter called the night before our flight," she says after a moment. "Her husband, my son-in-law, is leaving her for someone else. I was up all night with her, trying to help her through the initial shock." She pauses. "He's black, actually. My son-in-law was my son-in-law. We were close, or I thought we were. After the video went viral, he texted me saying he'd always known I had a problem with black people." She looks up, meeting Maya's eyes directly. "I wanted to believe that wasn't true, that I treat everyone the same, but the video doesn't lie, does it? I approached you and not the others with similar bags. I have to ask myself why." The raw honesty in Brenda's voice catches Maya off guard. She'd expected defensiveness, perhaps, or a more polished version of the apology email, not this vulnerable self-examination. "Have you found an answer?" Maya asks quietly. Brenda considers this. "Not a complete one, but I've been thinking about it constantly. I think I carry biases I've never fully acknowledged, ones that might become more evident when I'm stressed or emotional." She takes a deep breath. That's not an excuse. It's just the beginning of me trying to understand so I can do better. A server approaches, and Maya orders another tea while Brenda requests coffee. The brief interruption gives both women a moment to collect their thoughts. When they're alone again, Maya says, "I appreciate your honesty. It would be easier to blame exhaustion or to insist you were just doing your job." "Easier, but not right," Brenda replies, "and it wouldn't help me grow from this." She hesitates. "May I ask how your son is doing? Elijah, right?" Maya nods, surprised that Brenda remembers his name. "He's fine, blissfully unaware of all the commotion he's at the center of." "That's good," Brenda says, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. "He seemed like a good little traveler aside from." She trails off, not wanting to reference the confrontation directly again. Maya finds herself sharing more than she'd planned. "He's all I have left of his father. My husband was a police officer. He was killed in the line of duty 4 months ago." Brenda's expression crumples with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry, I had no idea." "How could you have known?" Maya says. "That's the thing about these brief interactions, we don't see the full humanity of each other. I didn't know about your daughter's situation. You didn't know about my loss. We're just snapshots to each other, filled in with assumptions." Brenda nods slowly, absorbing this insight. "I've been a flight attendant for 23 years, she says. "I've interacted with thousands of passengers, but how many have I truly seen?" Their beverages arrive, and both women take the opportunity to sip and reflect. The conversation has already gone deeper than either anticipated, moving beyond the specific incident to the human complexities underlying it. "What happens now?" Maya asks eventually. "With your job, I mean." Brenda sets down her coffee cup. "There's an investigation ongoing. I'm on administrative leave until it's complete." She manages a small, sad smile. 23 years without incident, and now this. But whatever happens, I accept it. Actions have consequences. "Would you like me to speak to the airline?" Maya offers, surprising herself. "Not to excuse what happened, but to say that I believe your apology is sincere." Brenda looks genuinely startled by the offer. "You would do that after how I treated you?" "This isn't about erasing what happened," Maya explains. "It's about what happens next. Firing you doesn't solve the larger problem, but if you're truly committed to learning and growing from this, maybe that's more valuable in the long run." Tears well in Brenda's eyes. "Thank you," she whispers. "That's more grace than I expected or deserve." Maya shakes her head slightly. "Not grace, purpose." She repeats the words she'd said to Richard the day before. "If this is going to be more than just another viral outrage that fades when the next one comes along, then something constructive needs to emerge from it." They talk for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily as initial tensions dissolve. They discuss their families, their careers, their perspectives on the world. Brenda shares stories from her decades of flying. Maya talks about teaching history in a way that empowers her students to see themselves as agents of change. By the time they part, something has shifted between them. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual recognition of each other's full humanity. They exchange contact information with a tentative agreement to follow up after the airline's investigation concludes. Outside the cafe, before they go their separate ways, Brenda says, "I've been thinking about what you said about purpose. I want you to know that I'm going to use this experience to become more aware, more conscious in how I interact with everyone." She pauses. "And when I return to flying, if I return to flying, I'll be bringing that awareness with me every day." Maya nods, acknowledging the commitment. "That's all any of us can do, learn, grow, and try to do better." She extends her hand, which Brenda takes, completing a circle that began with confrontation and concluded with connection. As Maya walks away, she feels lighter somehow, as if the weight of the viral moment has been partially lifted. The incident will always be part of her story now, a moment captured and shared with millions of strangers. But this conversation with Brenda has added depth and dimension to that flat, digital narrative, transforming it from merely an example of discrimination into something more complex and ultimately more hopeful. Later that afternoon, Maya calls Richard to tell him about the meeting. He listens attentively, asking thoughtful questions, expressing genuine interest in the outcome. "That took courage," he says when she finishes. "On both your parts." "It felt necessary," Maya replies simply. "Like something I needed to do, not just for Brenda or myself, but for Elijah, to show him that there are ways to respond to injustice that don't just perpetuate cycles of hurt and anger." Richard is quiet for a moment. "You've given me something to think about," he says finally. "About how I've responded to similar situations throughout my career. Perhaps there were opportunities for connection and growth that I missed because I was too focused on moving past the discomfort." Their conversation shifts to Richard's medical conference, which concludes the following day, and Maya's plans for the remainder of her visit with Alina. Before they end the call, Richard mentions that he'll be in Chicago for another conference in a few months. Perhaps we could meet for coffee, he suggests. Continue this conversation. I'd like that, Maya agrees, recognizing that their unexpected connection has value beyond the circumstances that created it. That evening, as Maya helps Alina prepare dinner, her phone buzzes with a notification. It's a message from one of her students, a shy girl named Zoe who rarely speaks up in class. Ms. Johnson, I saw you on the news. You were so brave. It made me think maybe I could be brave too. Maya shows the message to Alina, her eyes bright with unshed tears. This is why it matters, she says softly. This is why all of it matters. Alina squeezes her shoulder in silent understanding. They both know that Lionel would be proud, not just of how Maya handled herself in a moment of conflict, but of how she transformed that moment into an opportunity for growth and connection. As the week progresses, the viral video begins to fade from public attention, replaced by newer outrages and controversies. But its impact lingers in the lives of those directly involved. The airline completes its investigation, resulting in a formal reprimand for Brenda rather than termination. This decision comes after Maya speaks to the investigators, confirming that she and Brenda have met privately and that she believes Brenda's commitment to learning from the incident is genuine. Brenda returns to flying, carrying with her a new awareness and the humbling experience of having her worst moment captured and shared with the world. Richard returns to Chicago, to his surgical practice and academic responsibilities, but something has shifted in his approach. He finds himself speaking up more often in meetings when he notices inequities or biases, using his position of authority to ensure other voices are heard. The medical conference publishes a paper based on the panel discussion, bringing attention to the ways unconscious bias manifests in healthcare settings. And Maya? She returns to her classroom with a new perspective to share with her students. The viral incident becomes an occasional teaching tool, an example of how a moment of conflict can lead to growth, how speaking up can create change, how seeing the full humanity in others transforms understanding. 3 months later, when Richard is back in Chicago for another conference, he and Maya meet for coffee as planned. They discover a shared interest in mentoring young people from underrepresented groups in their respective fields, which leads to a collaboration, a program bringing together medical professionals and educators to create pathways for high school students interested in healthcare careers. 6 months after the flight, Maya receives an unexpected email from a producer at a major documentary series. They're creating an episode about viral moments of racial conflict and their aftermath, focusing on stories that didn't end with the video, but continued to evolve in meaningful ways. Would Maya, Richard, and perhaps even Brenda be willing to participate? After careful consideration and consultation with both Richard and Brenda, Maya agrees. The resulting documentary segment tells a more nuanced story than the viral video ever could, one that acknowledges the reality of discrimination, but also highlights the possibility of growth, connection, and change. A year after the flight, on what would have been Lionel's birthday, Maya sits with Elijah at the kitchen table. He's now 18 months old, a bundle of energy and curiosity who bears his father's smile. Maya shows him a photograph of Lionel in his police uniform, telling him stories about the father he'll never know firsthand. Your daddy believed in standing up for what's right, she tells him, though he's too young to fully understand, and in giving people a chance to do better when they've made mistakes. Her phone buzzes with a text from Richard, who has become a friend and occasional mentor to some of her students interested in medical careers. It's followed by a message from Brenda, who is flying through Chicago next week and wants to know if Maya is available for lunch. Maya looks at these messages, then back at her son, who grins at her with Lionel's dimples. The viral moment that once felt like an unwanted invasion of privacy has somehow expanded her world, creating connections she never anticipated and opportunities to affect change in ways both small and significant. We're going to be okay, she tells Elijah, echoing the words she whispered to him that night after the flight. Better than okay. And in that moment she believes it completely.